Theology according to the Prophet of Islam. We'll go through these sources rather quickly, but everything you see on the screen will be copy-pasted into a pinned comment. We'll start in Bukhari 644, where we see Muhammad wanting to burn down the houses of men who did not present themselves for the congregational prayer. And again from Bukhari in 24:20, Muhammad wanted to order someone to pronounce the prayer, and then he would go to the houses of those who did not attend the prayer and burn their houses over them. Such a nice, peaceful guy. Again from Sahih Muslim, I intend that I should command a person to lead people in prayer and then burn those persons who absent themselves from the Jummah prayer. Now, perhaps the only thing that stopped Muhammad was he thought that fire was the judgment of Allah only, and so Muhammad used it sparingly. He burned people's possessions, in some cases their property, and occasionally lit a Jew on fire to torture them. Now, Ali didn't get this memo because Ali burned apostates, you'll remember, until he was corrected by Ibn Abbas and said, don't burn them, that's Allah's judgment, you're just supposed to kill them. But I digress. Now, is this figurative language? Well, no, if you go to Islam Q&A forums online, you'll see that they will cite these sorts of sources to show how the congregational prayer is compulsory. So there's one example, and again, we have another one, and then they'll cite narrations like we just saw from Sahih al-Bukhari. Now, you have to set the stage, so to speak. You have to clear the air before prayer, and Muhammad, of course, had his own unique issues. Aisha said, I used to wash the traces of semen from the clothes of the Prophet, and he used to go for prayers while his clothes were still wet. So he's in a hurry, but you still have to clean up a little bit. But wait, there are more issues. Narrated Aisha, the things which annul prayer were mentioned before me, and those were a dog, a donkey, and a woman. I said, you have compared us women to donkeys and dogs, and just so you know that Aisha didn't stutter, it is not good that you people have made us women equal to dogs and donkeys. So be careful when you're praying that a dog doesn't walk in front of you. You also don't want a donkey walking in front of you, and you don't want a woman walking in front of you. This is why the women are behind the men in the mosque during prayer. More on donkeys later. Now, violence is allowed also in the context of prayer. Let's look at a couple of examples. The Prophet said, if while you are praying, someone intends to pass in front of you, prevent him. And should he insist, prevent him again, etc. And you can prevent him violently. For example, violently pushing him, because such person is like a devil. Now, speaking of violence, everyone was prostrating with Muhammad except for one old man who took a handful of pebbles or dust in his palm and lifted it to his forehead and said, this is sufficient for me. So he's the only one who didn't prostrate, and later he was killed in a state of unbelief. Wonder if that's a coincidence. He didn't prostrate correctly like everyone else, and he was killed later. Now, sometimes you have to kill an apostate before you can even talk about prayer. There's a Jew who was tied up. He became a Muslim and then reverted back to Judaism, and so that's why he's bound there among some of Muhammad's companions. One of them said, I will not sit down till he has been killed. This is the judgment of Allah and his apostle. And so he was killed. And then we discussed the night prayers, and one of us said, I pray and sleep, and I hope that Allah will reward me for sleep as well as for my blah, blah, blah. So the point is, they're going to sit there and they're going to talk about their religion, but there's a Jew tied up who was an apostate, so they had to kill him first. Now, this is my personal favorite, Sahih Muslim. The Messenger of Allah said, does the man who lifts his head before the Imam not...
The hadith regarding the issue is as follows. Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, narrates, the Messenger of Allah said, no prayer is harder for the hypocrites than the morning and the night prayers, and if they knew the reward for these prayers at their respective times, they would certainly present themselves in the mosques even if they had to crawl. The Prophet added, certainly I decided to order the muaddin to pronounce adhan and order a man to lead the prayer and then take a fire flame to burn all those who had not left their houses so far for the prayer along with their houses. Bukhari, Adhan 29, Husumat 5, Akam 52, Muslim, Masahid 252, 651, Mawada, Salatul Jama'ah 3, 1, 129-130, Abu Dawud, Salat 47, 548, 549, Tirmidhi, Salat 162, 217, Nasai, Imama 49, 2, 107. Since the word men is used in the hadith, women and children are regarded to be exempt from it. Besides, since praying in congregation is 25 or according to another narration 27 times more virtuous than praying at home or somewhere else alone, our Prophet encouraged praying in congregation with this hadith. There are many hadiths mentioning the importance of praying in congregation. As it is understood from those hadiths, the threat was uttered by the Prophet because he does not want his ummah to be deprived of the reward of praying in congregation, and he wants to call people who do not pray in congregation to the mosque and hence to praying in congregation. He expressed the importance of praying in congregation like that. There is another version of this hadith which also adds more detail towards the end to further clarify. It is cited in answering a question regarding if congregational prayer is obligatory. In another hadith is the addition, by the one whose hand is my soul. If any one of them had known that he would get a bone covered with good meat or two small pieces of meat present between two ribs, he would have turned up for Aisha prayer in congregation. Bukhari 644 reported differently by Muslim, see Lulu al-Marjan Hadith 383. Some may say that this hadith would render the verdict personally obligatory, fard, ain. However, the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam was saying this specifically about the hypocrites munafiqun who abandoned the congregation and did not pray at all. Furthermore, the Prophet Muhammad did not burn down their houses, but rather stated that he only considered it. Response given by Khatib ash-Shirbini in his Mughni al-Muhtaj page 396. Jonathan Brown adds after citing the whole hadith. It's clear from the whole hadith that this is almost a playful description. The Prophet is saying if you hear the call to prayer you're being invited to a meal, why would you not go to that meal? It's almost a playful example, and he's saying, people who don't go, it makes me so upset, I wish I could sort of light their house on fire, maybe then they would leave. That's hyperbole. No Muslim scholar that I ever heard of or come across says it's licit to go and light someone's house on fire because they don't answer the call to prayer. If you did that, you would be a literalist, but you'd also be an idiot because you'd be violating all sorts of rights of that person. You don't have the right to light their house on fire and destroy their property and probably kill them. So then this is hyperbole. The Prophet delivers these messages through a language of hyperbole. To conclude, this hadith does not permit Muslims to burn down houses of those who don't attend congregational prayer. I highly recommend watching the lecture, Verifying and Understanding Hadith, as cited above, as it teaches Muslims to be more critical when a hadith is misrepresented. The hadith should be evaluated in the form of encouraging people to pray in congregation and threatening those who abandon praying in congregation. The Prophet did not utter those words because he wanted to burn the houses of people. As a matter of fact, if he wanted to do so, he could have done it. That is, he preferred those words in order to express the importance of the issue. We also use different expressions for the important things in our daily lives. Islam critiqued said that he done that but his face doesn't changed into an ass. But notice one thing there, the hadith says the Messenger of Allah said, does the man who lifts his head before the Imam not fear that Allah may change his face into that of an ass? It doesn't say, Allah will changes into ass, it says, Allah may changes into ass. So his reasoning is idiotic because Allah may change his face into an ass. Not will changes into ass. Then he said about Muhammad and Aisha, semen. Narrated back quote Aisha, I used to wash the semen off the clothes of the Prophet, and even then I used to notice one or more spots on them. 5. 6. Why assume that the marks on the clothes were because of thawing? The act of removing entire clothes that is common in hypersexualized cultures today was not the act of all cultures. Even today, it is not in all cultures to remove entire clothes for the act of intercourse. Therefore, traces of semen on clothes is not something surprising. Secondly, the argument that the marks were due to thawing also assume that entire clothes were not taken off, so why assume so in one case and ignore the other altogether? 7. Lastly, why would one have an issue with the personal lives of a married couple? The main argument based in the flawed conclusions. The Prophet technically married Aisha before she reached puberty and then practically married her after she reached puberty. In other words, the marriage was decided before her puberty but finalized after she had reached puberty. Based on this backdrop, the anti-Islamic claim states, this 3-year period between marriage and consummation must have been the time when he practiced thawing, unless our Muslim friends want to argue that he practiced thawing with a different virgin. The deceitful linking of unrelated narrations and misrepresenting them with twisted interpretations have been exposed above, and once that faulty base is rectified, the question does not even arise, and searching for the time when he practiced thawing is nothing less than being dishonest. Moreover, the Prophet married an older lady when he was 25 years old and remained monogamous for 25 years till the age of 50. This proves that the motive of his later marriages was not desire as his enemies claim. During the time between engagement and marriage, Aisha stayed with her father, and so the allegation of thighing with a prepubescent girl does not even arise. Indeed, Allah knows the best. Hadith 64. Then he said about this hadith. Narrated Abu Burda. Abu Musa said, I came to the Prophet along with two men from the tribe of Asharian, one on my right and the other on my left, while Allah's apostle was brushing his teeth with a siwak, and both men asked him for some employment. The Prophet said, O Abu Musa, O Abdullah bin Qais. I said, by him who sent you with the truth, these two men did not tell me what was in their hearts, and I did not realize that they were seeking employment. As if I were looking now at his siwak being drawn to a corner under his lips, and he said, we never, or, we do not, appoint for our affairs anyone who seeks to be employed. But O Abu Musa, or, Abdullah bin Qais, go to Yemen. The Prophet then sent Mu'a bin Jabal after him, and when Mu'a reached him, he spread out a cushion for him and requested him to get down and sit on the cushion. Behold, there was a fettered man beside Abu Musa. Mu'a asked, who is this man? Abu Musa said, he was a Jew and became a Muslim and then reverted back to Judaism. Then Abu Musa requested Mu'a to sit down, but Mu'a said, I will not sit down till he has been killed. This is the judgment of Allah and his apostle for such cases, and repeated it thrice. Then Abu Musa ordered that the man be killed, and he was killed. Abu Musa added, then we discussed the night prayers, and one of us said, I pray and sleep, and I hope that Allah will reward me for my sleep as well as for my prayers. Bukhari, Book 9, Volume 84, Hadith 58. 0. Nezrina. Almost 9 years ago. Muslims do believe in certain circumstances that someone may receive the death penalty. The sitem is one of, an eye for an eye, unless the person forgives them. Now in the foreign Arab countries it depends which one you're talking about. You would have to check if they follow Sharia law or not. For example, Saudi Arabia does do it based on Islam, but another country like Dubai doesn't uses rules based on a monarchy. And about the death penalty for being a murtad, one who converts from Islam, it's not true. In the Prophet's time many people joined Islam and after a while they would leave. For it being too difficult on them, then convert, and they weren't killed. Where people got the idea that one should be punished with death is that once there were a group of pagans that converted or had interest of converting, then it turns out they only joined because they realized that the Muslim army was strong, so they did it to gain money. Then at one point when a group of men went to them to help them learn about Islam, they killed the whole group, and this was a group of the wisest Muslims that had the whole Quran memorized. So the Prophet asked if they would be punished. Then a war happened and every one of them died, so people got the idea if you convert back you should be killed, but it isn't true. These people were traitors. People forget to look at the example of all the other people that converted, and no harm was done to them. There was a Muslim man that converted to Christianity, and all they did was that him and his wife divorced because of the differences they had. So you don't kill someone for converting, you punish someone for committing treason, which is something that anyone would do. It just happens that people that convert often not just convert but turn against Islam, and this is why they receive death, not for the actual act of converting. The complete sentence is narrated by Aisha. The things which annul the prayers were mentioned before me. They said, prayer is annulled by a dog, a donkey, and a woman, if they pass in front of the praying people. I said, you have made us, i.e., women, dogs. I saw the Prophet praying while I used to lie in my bed between him and the Qibla. Whenever I was in need of something, I would slip away, for I disliked to face him. Now, from the full text, it has become clear that 1. Aisha is talking to another person. 2. This other person claims that prayer is annulled by a dog, a donkey, and a woman if they pass in front of the praying people. 3. Aisha doesn't agree with this. Of course, as she said, this people was trying to make women just as the same as dogs. Of course Aisha doesn't agree. In today's society, if you say something like this, you will get slapped. Don't say anything like this. 4. Aisha tried to refute this claim. She said, she often lie in her bed, which is in front of the Prophet while he prays. Also, whenever she needs to do something while the Prophet is still praying, she tried to slip away to not bother him while he prays. There. It should be clear now. So why does people say something like that in the first place? The original warning basically says, try to place something in front of you when you pray, so other people know which region they can't cross in front of you, because it is rude, dude. If you walk across him outside this region, that's okay. Special cautions for dogs and donkey, because they tend to lick you happily and might not understand this border. Special caution too for mature women. Well, you know why. Because I might be distracted if a beautiful girl walk by while I'm praying. But that doesn't mean women equal to dog. That's ridiculous. Right. Nonsense. That's it. That would be clear. Then he said about Sahih Bukhari 3274, which says, the Prophet said, if while you are praying, somebody intends to pass in front of you, prevent him, and should he insist, prevent him again, and if he insists again, fight with him, i.e., prevent him violently, e.g., pushing him violently, because such a person is like a devil. So yes, if someone passes in front of you when you are praying is devil, because when you pray towards the Kaaba, Satan comes in front of you to block our direction. That's what it means. That man who comes in front of you while you are praying is affected to devil as he is trying to block our prayer. That's why you should violently push tht man. Prophet is not wicked. Prophet only said what should you do when someone passes in front of you while you are praying. And even more, Prophet Muhammad have said us another thing. You should place a sutra whenever you perform prayers, taking all the precautions to stop children and others from passing in front of you. If in spite of all efforts they pass in front of you during prayer, we think Allah will forgive you. Inshallah. Allah knows best. Don't trust idiots like Islam critiqued, apostate prophet or would.